Captain Jake Morrison stood in the massive hall of the Galactic Council station. The ceiling stretched high above him, filled with floating lights that changed colors like a rainbow. Around him sat creatures from dozens of different worlds. Some looked like giant lizards, others like walking crystals, and a few resembled nothing he had ever seen on Earth. Today was supposed to be Earth's big moment. After 50 years of trade and diplomacy with alien races, humanity was finally presenting their first real warship to the galaxy. The USS Defiance floated outside the station, visible through the huge windows that lined the hall. Morrison felt proud as he looked at his ship. She was not pretty like the alien vessels with their smooth curves and glowing parts. The Defiance looked like what she was, a machine built for war. Her hull was thick gray metal, covered with sensor arrays and weapon mounts. Steam vented from her cooling systems, and her engines glowed with the orange light of fusion fire. Admiral Vexithera rose from his seat. The reptilian commander was 12 feet tall, with dark green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. His voice carried easily across the hall when he spoke. "So this is what humans call a warship," he said, looking at the holographic display that showed the Defiance's specifications. His forked tongue flicked out as he made a sound that might have been laughter. "How very primitive." Other alien delegates began to whisper among themselves. Morrison heard the word crude repeated in several different languages. A crystalline being that looked like a walking diamond tapped its chair with one sharp finger, making a sound like breaking glass. Commander Lisa Park stood beside Morrison. She was Earth's chief engineer and had spent 5 years designing the Defiance. Her hands were clenched into fists, but her face remained calm. She had expected this reaction. "The ship uses fusion reactors for power," Park explained to the assembly. "The main weapons are railguns that fire solid projectiles at very high speed. The armor is layered metal plating designed to absorb both energy and kinetic impacts." More laughter filled the hall. Fleet Commander Zorketh, whose crystal body sparkled like a prism, stood up from his seat. "Fusion reactors? We stopped using those 300 years ago. And kinetic weapons? Metal bullets fired from magnetic rails?" He turned to address the other delegates. "The Zephyrian Empire has protected this galaxy with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes. Our ships are powered by antimatter cores that produce 1,000 times more energy than any fusion reactor. Our shields can stop any known weapon. Admiral." Vexithera activated another hologram. This one showed a sleek Zephyrian battleship, its hull smooth as glass and glowing with internal light. "This is the Shartok, my flagship. She carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Her shields have never been penetrated by enemy fire." Morrison watched as the alien ship rotated slowly in the hologram. It was beautiful, he had to admit. The Zephyrian vessel looked like a work of art, all flowing lines and elegant curves. Compared to it, the Defiance looked like a brick with engines attached. "Your ship is very impressive," Morrison said carefully. "But different design philosophies can both be effective." "Design philosophy?" Vexithara's laugh was like the hiss of escaping steam. "There is only one philosophy that matters in space combat: superior technology. Energy shields, plasma weapons, faster-than-light communications. These are the tools of modern warfare." He gestured toward the image of the Defiance. "What you have built is a museum piece. It belongs in the same era as chemical rockets and nuclear bombs. A small, furry creature that looked like a cross between a cat and an octopus spoke up from the back of the hall. Perhaps the humans could serve as cargo haulers or medical transports. Their ship seemed sturdy enough for peaceful purposes." This brought another wave of laughter. Morrison felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Lieutenant Alex Turner was taking notes on a small tablet. The young tactical officer's jaw was tight with anger. Vexithera moved closer to the human delegation, his yellow eyes fixed on Morrison with what might have been pity. "Captain, your species shows great promise in trade and diplomacy. Human merchants are honest and your diplomats are skilled negotiators. But warfare is a different matter entirely." He paused, letting his words sink in. Space combat requires split-second timing, advanced technology, and centuries of experience. The Zephyrian Empire has fought and won 10,000 battles across this galaxy. We know what works and what does not. Zorketh nodded in agreement. The captain speaks truth. Humans, you should focus on what you do well. Leave the fighting to those who understand it. Morrison felt the weight of dozens of alien eyes watching him. He knew that this moment would be reported back to Earth, where billions of humans waited to hear how their first warship had been received by the galaxy. We appreciate the advice, he said finally. But Earth believes that every species should be able to defend itself. Defend against what? Vexithara asked. The Empire maintains peace throughout this sector. Our fleets patrol the trade routes and keep pirates away from merchant ships. Under our protection, commerce flows freely between worlds. He activated a new hologram showing star charts marked with patrol routes and fleet positions. For a reasonable fee, human ships can travel safely under Imperial protection. Your colonies will be secure, your trade routes guaranteed. Morrison understood what was being offered. It was not protection, it was a protection racket. The Zephyrians wanted Earth to pay tribute and acknowledge their superiority. In return, human ships would be allowed to conduct business under alien oversight. Earth will consider the proposal, Morrison said diplomatically. Excellent, Vexthera replied. I am sure your leaders will see the wisdom in accepting help from their betters. The formal presentation ended with polite applause from some delegates and continued whispers from others. As the aliens began to file out of the hall, Morrison heard fragments of conversation in various languages. Most seemed to be discussing Earth's naivety in thinking they could build effective warships. Park moved closer to Morrison as the hall emptied. That went about as well as expected, she said quietly. They think we're idiots, Turner added, still writing on his tablet. Morrison looked out at the Defiance floating in space beyond the windows. His ship did not look like much compared to the sleek alien vessels docked nearby. But he remembered the months of testing, the careful calculations, the thousands of hours his crew had spent learning every system. Maybe we are idiots, he said, or maybe they just don't understand what they're looking at. As they prepared to return to their ship, Morrison noticed that a few alien delegates were still watching them. Their expressions were not mocking like the others. Instead, they looked thoughtful, as if they were trying to solve a puzzle. The captain wondered if the Zephyrians had made a mistake today. They had shown their hand, revealed their technology, and their tactics. They had assumed that humans would simply accept their place as junior partners in the galactic community. But Morrison remembered something his old instructor had said at the Naval Academy. Never assume your enemy is stupid just because they do things differently. The Zephyrians had just made that exact mistake. 3 months had passed since the embarrassing presentation at the Galactic Council. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship was heading toward the Centauri system, where trouble was brewing. The Zephyrian Empire had made their move. 2 weeks ago, Admiral Vexithara announced that the Centauri neutral zone was now under Imperial protection. This meant that all the trade routes Earth's colonies depended on now belonged to the aliens. Morrison read the message from Earth Command again. President Karen Walsh had been very clear in her orders. The Defiance was to maintain a presence in the disputed area without starting a war. It was an impossible task, but someone had to do it. Captain, Lieutenant Alex Turner called from his station. We're getting a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship. Put it on screen, Morrison ordered. The view screen filled with the reptilian face of Admiral Vexithara. His yellow eyes seemed to glow with satisfaction as he spoke. Captain Morrison, how nice to see you again. I trust you received our announcement about the new security arrangements in this sector. Morrison kept his voice steady. We received it, Admiral. Earth does not recognize the Empire's claim to neutral space. Vexthera made that hissing sound that passed for laughter among his species. Recognition is not required, Captain. Only compliance. This area is now under Imperial jurisdiction for the safety of all shipping. Behind the Admiral, Morrison could see the bridge of the Shartok. The Zephyrian flagship was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Defiance. Its crew moved with practiced efficiency between stations that glowed with alien technology. "We will be conducting training exercises in this area," Vexithera continued. "I suggest you keep your distance. We would not want any accidents." Transmission ended, leaving Morrison staring at empty space. He turned to his crew, who were all watching him with worried expressions. Commander Lisa Park spoke first. "He's threatening us without actually threatening us. Very clever." "What kind of training exercises?" asked Turner. Morrison did not have to wait long for an answer. Over the next several days, Zephyrian ships began appearing throughout the sector. They conducted mock battles, firing their plasma weapons at target drones and showing off their advanced technology. The displays were impressive and frightening. The aliens' plasma cannons could melt asteroids in seconds. Their quantum torpedoes created explosions that lit up space like miniature suns. Every demonstration was clearly meant to intimidate any human ships in the area. "They're putting on a show," observed Danny Ross, the Defiance's weapons officer. He was studying the sensor readings from the alien exercises. "Look at these power signatures. Those plasma weapons could cut through most ship hulls like paper." Chief Engineer Park nodded grimly. "Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours. Those antimatter reactors produce incredible amounts of energy." Morrison watched the demonstrations from his command chair. The Zephyrian ships moved like dancers, their sleek hulls gliding through space with perfect precision. Their weapons fired in coordinated patterns that would devastate any conventional fleet. "Captain," Turner said quietly, "they're testing us, waiting to see if we'll run or give them a reason to attack." Morrison knew Turner was right. The aliens were being very careful not to cross any lines that would justify human retaliation, but they were making it clear that any ship that challenged them would be destroyed. The situation got worse when a human freighter, the cargo ship Peaceful Trader, suffered an engine failure near the edge of the neutral zone. The ship sent out a distress signal, asking for assistance. Morrison immediately ordered the Defiance to respond. It was their duty to help any human vessel in trouble. But as they approached the disabled freighter, Zephyrian ships began to surround them. 6 vessels closing on our position, reported navigation specialist Amy Chen. "They're not taking any threatening actions, but they're definitely watching us." Morrison opened a channel to the lead Zephyrian ship. "This is Captain Morrison of the USS Defiance. We are responding to a distress call from a civilian vessel." The reply came from Admiral Vexithera himself. "Captain, you are approaching the edge of restricted space. The disabled vessel appears to have drifted into Imperial territory." Morrison felt his anger rising. The freighter had not moved. The Zephyrians had simply expanded their claimed territory to include it. "Admiral, that ship is in neutral space according to all recognized star charts." "Charts can be updated, Captain. We have determined that this area requires Imperial supervision for the safety of all travelers." On the view screen, Morrison could see the Peaceful Trader drifting helplessly. The freighter's crew of 12 was depending on him for rescue, but 6 Zephyrian warships now formed a loose circle around the Defiance. "We are going to assist that vessel," Morrison said firmly. "They are human citizens in distress." "That would be inadvisable," Vexithera replied. His voice carried a clear threat. "Imperial space is off limits to unauthorized vessels. This includes military ships that might be carrying weapons." Commander Park moved closer to Morrison's chair. "Captain, if we back down now, they'll know they can push us around whenever they want." Morrison looked at his crew. These men and women had volunteered to serve aboard Earth's first real warship. They knew the risks when they signed up. But he also knew that starting a war would doom millions of humans throughout the galaxy. "Admiral," he said finally, "we are not seeking conflict. We simply want to render aid to a disabled civilian vessel." "Conflict is exactly what you will find if you proceed," Vexithera warned. "The Empire does not make idle threats, Captain. We have the firepower to back up our words." As if to emphasize the point, the Zephyrian ships began powering up their weapons. The space around the Defiance filled with the glow of charging plasma cannons and the strange energy signatures of quantum torpedo tubes. Turner looked up from his tactical display. "Captain, they have us outgunned 6-1. Each of their ships is more heavily armed than we are." Morrison knew the odds. He also knew that Earth was watching. Every decision he made here would be studied by politicians and military leaders back home. If he retreated, it would confirm that humans were too weak to defend themselves. If he advanced, he might start a war that humanity could not win. "Sir," Chen reported, "the freighter is hailing us. They're requesting immediate assistance. Their life support systems are failing." Morrison made his decision. "All hands, this is the captain. We are going to rescue our people." Battle stations. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship as the crew prepared for possible combat. Morrison watched the Zephyrian ships on his screen, looking for any sign of their intentions. "Danny, charge the railguns, but do not target anything yet," he ordered. "Lisa, give me everything the reactors can handle. Amy, plot a course to the freighter." "Yes, sir," came the replies from his crew. Admiral Vexithera's face appeared on the screen again. "Captain Morrison, you are making a grave mistake. The Empire has kept peace in this galaxy for centuries. Do not force us to demonstrate why." Morrison looked directly into the alien's yellow eyes. "Admiral, we're not here to fight. But we're not here to run either." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside, the Zephyrian ships maintained their positions, weapons charged and ready. The trap had been set and Morrison had walked right into it. But as he watched his crew work with calm efficiency, Morrison felt a strange sense of confidence. The aliens thought they knew everything about human ships and human tactics. They were about to learn that there was a difference between looking weak and being weak. The USS Defiance moved forward toward the disabled freighter, and 6 alien warships moved to intercept. The USS Defiance moved slowly toward the disabled freighter. Around her, 6 Zephyrian warships maintained their positions like wolves circling prey. Captain Jake Morrison could feel the tension on his bridge as every crew member waited for what would happen next. "Distance to the freighter?" Morrison asked. 2,000 kilometers and closing, reported navigation specialist Amy Chen. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see her hands gripping her controls tightly. The main view screen showed the peaceful trader floating dead in space. The cargo ship looked tiny compared to the warship surrounding it. Morrison could see damage to her hull where an engine had exploded. 12 human lives depended on what happened in the next few minutes. "Captain," Lieutenant Alex Turner called from his tactical station. "The Zephyrian ships are changing formation. They're positioning themselves between us and the freighter." Morrison watched as the alien vessels moved with perfect coordination. Their hulls gleamed with internal light and he could see the glow of their charging weapons. The lead ship was Admiral Vexithera's flagship, the Shartok. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Beth Miller. Admiral Vexithera's reptilian face filled the view screen. His yellow eyes seemed to burn with cold fire as he spoke. "Captain Morrison, this is your final warning. You are approaching Imperial territory with an armed vessel. Turn back now or face the consequences." Morrison stood up from his command chair. He could feel his crew watching him, waiting for his decision. Behind him, Commander Lisa Park moved, closer to the engineering console, ready to push their systems to maximum power. "Admiral, we are here to rescue civilian survivors. We have no hostile intentions toward the Empire." Vexithara's forked tongue flicked out as he made that hissing laugh. "Intentions matter little, Captain. Results are what count. You will turn back, or you will be stopped. And if we refuse, then you will learn why the Empire has ruled this galaxy for 3 centuries. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Morrison looked at his crew. These people had followed him into an impossible situation, and now they might all die because of his decision. "Weapons status?" he asked quietly. "Railguns charged and ready," reported Weapons Officer Danny Ross. "We have 6 tungsten slugs loaded in the main batteries." "Sir," Turner said, studying his displays. "I've been analyzing their formation. They're positioning themselves like they expect to fight another energy-based fleet." Morrison frowned. "What do you mean?" "Look at their approach. Vectors. They're staying spread out to avoid overlapping plasma blasts, and they're angling their shields to deflect energy weapons. It's perfect tactics for fighting other Zephyrian ships. Commander Park looked up from her station. Alex is right. They're treating us like we're one of their own vessels. They don't understand how our weapons work. Before Morrison could respond, the lead Zephyrian frigate fired a warning shot. A bolt of superheated plasma streaked past the Defiance's hull, missing by only a few meters. The energy blast lit up space like a small star before dissipating into the void. That was their final warning, Morrison said grimly. All hands, battle stations. Red lights flashed throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. Morrison could hear the hum of the railgun capacitors charging to full power and the deep rumble of the fusion reactors increasing output. Danny, target the lead frigate. Amy, plot an intercept course directly toward their formation. Lisa, give me everything we've got. Sir, we're outnumbered 6-1, Turner warned. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the enemy positions. The Zephyrian ships were larger, more advanced, and had superior firepower. By every measure, the Defiance should have no chance against them. Then we better make our first shots count, Morrison replied. Engage. The USS Defiance suddenly accelerated, directly toward the Zephyrian formation. Her fusion engines flared brighter as Commander Park pushed them beyond their normal limits. The human ship's ungainly appearance had fooled the aliens into thinking she was slow and clumsy. Firing, Danny Ross announced. The first railgun slug left the Defiance's main battery at 12% of light speed. The tungsten projectile was no bigger than a telephone pole, but it carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The Zephyrian frigate's energy shields, designed to stop plasma bolts and particle beams, offered no protection against solid matter moving at such incredible speed. The slug punched through the alien ship's defenses as if they weren't there. The impact tore through the frigate's hull like paper. Internal explosions lit up the ship's interior as the tungsten projectile destroyed everything in its path. The alien vessel began to drift, her engines dead and her weapon systems offline. Direct hit, Turner reported with excitement. Their shields didn't even slow it down. Impossible, came Admiral Vexithera's voice over the open channel. How did they penetrate our shields? Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Fire again. The CO. Second railgun shot caught another Zephyrian ship as it tried to turn away. The slug smashed into the vessel's weapon array, tearing away plasma cannons and quantum torpedo tubes in a shower of sparks and debris. The remaining 4 alien ships began firing everything they had at the Defiance. Space around the human vessel became a storm of plasma bolts and energy beams. The superheated gas struck the ship's hull with tremendous force, but the Defiance's armor had been designed by engineers who understood that space combat meant taking hits, not avoiding them. The thick metal plating absorbed the plasma fire, glowing red-hot but holding together. The ship's multiple armor layers spread the impact across her entire structure. Armor holding, Park reported, though Morrison could hear the strain in her voice. We're losing some secondary systems, but the main hull is intact. Morrison watched as his ship plowed through the alien formation like a battering ram. The Zephyrians were trying to use tactics that worked against their own kind, but humans fought differently. They can't understand it, Turner said, studying the enemy movements. Their weapons are designed to overload energy shields. They don't know how to deal with physical armor. Another plasma bolt struck the Defiance's forward section, but the energy dissipated across the layered metal without causing serious damage. The human ship kept coming, her railguns firing steadily. The third shot disabled a Zephyrian cruiser's engines. The fourth punched through a destroyer's hull and caused a massive explosion that split the ship in half. 2 alien vessels remained, operational, but both were damaged and trying to retreat. Admiral Vexithara's flagship, the mighty Shartok, turned to face the Defiance directly. The massive dreadnought was 3 times larger than the human ship and carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. All remaining vessels, concentrate fire on the human ship, Vexithara ordered over the battle channel. Show them the price of defying the Empire. The 2 surviving ships joined the flagship in a coordinated attack. Plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes turned the space around the Defiance into a hellscape of energy and destruction. The human ship's armor began to buckle under the combined assault. "We can't take much more of this," Park warned. Sparks flew from damaged systems around the bridge, and Morrison could smell smoke in the air. "Then we end it now," Morrison decided. "Danny, load the special package." Ross's hands moved quickly over his controls. "Special package loaded and ready, sir." The special package was Earth's most closely guarded secret. Hidden in the Defiance's forward magazine was a single railgun-launched antimatter warhead. The weapon had been designed to penetrate any known defense system and deliver devastating results. Morrison looked at the Shartok on his view screen. The alien dreadnought was beautiful in its own way, a work of art that represented centuries of technological advancement. But beauty wouldn't save it from what was coming. "Target the flagship's main reactor," Morrison ordered. "Fire." The antimatter warhead left the railgun at the same incredible speed as the tungsten slugs. But this projectile carried a far deadlier payload. When it struck the Shartok's hull and detonated, the explosion lit up half the star system. Admiral Vexithara had just enough time to realize what was happening before his flagship disintegrated around him. The mighty dreadnought, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, became an expanding cloud of superheated gas and twisted metal. The remaining two alien ships immediately stopped firing and began broadcasting surrender signals. The battle was over, and against all odds the primitive human vessel had won. Morrison slumped back in his command chair, hardly believing what had just happened. Around him, his crew began to cheer, but he felt only exhaustion and the weight of what they had done. They had just declared war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The news of Admiral Vexithara's death spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major species knew that a single human warship had destroyed the pride of the Zephyrian fleet. The impossible had happened, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, reading reports from Earth Command. The ship was heading home after completing the rescue of the peaceful trader's crew. Behind them, the wreckage of 6 Zephyrian warships drifted in space like a monument to alien arrogance. "Captain," Communications Officer Beth Miller called out, "we're receiving priority transmissions from 17 different species. They all want to know what happened here." Morrison was not surprised. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology for 3 centuries. Seeing their flagship destroyed by a supposedly primitive human vessel had shaken the foundations of galactic politics. "What's the status on those 2 surviving Zephyrian ships?" Morrison asked. Lieutenant Alex Turner checked his displays. "They're still maintaining position at the edge of the system. No hostile movements, but they're definitely watching us." The 2 damaged alien vessels had surrendered immediately after the Shartok's destruction. Their crews were probably trying to figure out how to explain to their superiors that they had been defeated by humans. Commander Lisa Park approached Morrison's command chair. Her uniform was stained with grease from working in the damaged sections of the ship. "We've completed repairs to the primary systems. The armor held better than expected, but we lost about 30% of our secondary equipment." Morrison nodded. The Defiance had taken a beating during the battle, but she was still functional. More importantly, his crew was alive and unharmed. 12 civilians from the freighter were now safely aboard, grateful to be rescued. "Sir," Turner said, studying a new display, "I'm detecting multiple ship signatures entering the system. Long-range sensors show at least 20 vessels approaching our position." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. "Zephyrian reinforcements?" "Unknown, sir. The ships are too far away to identify, but they're coming fast." Morrison made a quick decision. "Amy, set course for the hyperspace jump point. Best possible speed." "Yes, sir," Navigation Specialist Amy Chen replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. The Defiance began accelerating away from the battle site. Morrison had no desire to face another Zephyrian fleet, especially with his ship damaged and his ammunition depleted. But as the approaching vessels came into sensor range, Turner made a surprising announcement. "Captain, those aren't Zephyrian ships. I'm reading signatures from at least 6 different species. Some of them are displaying diplomatic flags. Morrison frowned. Diplomatic flags? What do they want? His question was answered when the lead ship transmitted a message. The alien on the screen looked like a tall, thin humanoid with blue skin and large black eyes. Morrison recognized the species as vegan traders, known for their neutrality in galactic politics. Human vessel, this is Ambassador Kethrall of the Vegan Free Traders. We request permission to speak with your captain regarding recent events in this system. Morrison looked at his crew, then back at the screen. This is Captain Morrison. What can I do for you, Ambassador? The alien's expression was difficult to read, but his voice carried excitement. Captain, news of your victory has reached every inhabited world within 50 light years. The destruction of the Shartok has sent shockwaves throughout the Empire's territory. I'm not sure I understand. Ambassador Kethrall leaned forward. Captain, the Zephyrian Empire has controlled our trade routes for generations. They tax our cargo, inspect our ships, and treat us like servants. But today, you proved that they are not invincible. On the main view screen, Morrison could see the approaching fleet. Ships of different sizes and designs flew together in a loose formation. Some looked like crystalline sculptures. Others resembled organic growths, and a few appeared to be built from scavenged parts. 3 hours ago, the ambassador continued, rebellion broke out on 6 worlds in the Outer Rim. Colonial governors are declaring independence from imperial rule. Trade guilds are refusing to pay imperial taxes. The Empire is facing the largest uprising in its history. Morrison realized what was happening. His victory had been more than just a military defeat for the Zephyrians. It had broken the myth of their invincibility. Species that had lived under alien domination for centuries suddenly believed they could fight back. Turner looked up from his console with amazement. Sir, I'm getting reports from our intelligence network. There are riots on Zephyrian worlds. Military commanders are requesting reinforcements from the home fleet. The Empire is crumbling, Ambassador Kethrall said simply, and it all started here, with one human ship that refused to run away. Morrison felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had not intended to start a galactic revolution. All he had wanted was to rescue 12 civilians from a disabled freighter. What do you want from us? Morrison asked the ambassador. An alliance, came the immediate reply. The free traders represent 47 species that want independence from imperial control. We offer our support to humanity in exchange for protection against Zephyrian retaliation. Morrison was about to respond when Miller announced another incoming transmission. This one was from Earth itself. President Karen Walsh appeared on a secondary screen looking tired but determined. Captain Morrison, congratulations on your victory. However, the situation has become extremely complicated. The Zephyrian High Command is demanding your immediate surrender. They claim you committed an act of war by destroying their flagship. Morrison had expected this response. What are our orders, Madam President? Return to Earth immediately. We need to debrief you and your crew about what happened. The entire galaxy is watching our response to this crisis. President Walsh paused, looking directly at Morrison through the screen. Captain, what you did today has changed everything. The Zephyrians are no longer the undisputed masters of space, but that also means we're now seen as a threat to their power. Morrison understood the implications. Earth had just made the most powerful empire in the galaxy into an enemy. There would be consequences for this victory, and not all of them would be pleasant. Sir, Turner reported, more ships are arriving in the system. I'm counting over 50 vessels now, representing at least 12 different species. Morrison looked at the growing fleet on his view screen. Ships that had never worked together before were now flying side by side, united by their shared hatred of imperial rule. The revolution that had started with the destruction of one ship was spreading across the galaxy. Ambassador Kethrall spoke, again. Captain, we know that Earth cannot face the Empire alone, but together, all the free species of the galaxy can stand against tyranny. Will humanity lead us in this fight? Morrison thought about his crew, about the billions of humans living on worlds throughout known space. They had wanted nothing more than to live in peace and trade freely with their alien neighbors. But the Zephyrians had forced this confrontation by their arrogance and greed. "Ambassador, I'm just a ship captain. I don't have the authority to make alliances for my entire species." "Perhaps not," the alien replied. "But you have something more important than authority. You have shown that the Empire can be defeated. That knowledge is spreading to every oppressed world in the galaxy." Morrison made a decision that would affect the course of galactic history. "All vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Defiance. We are returning to Earth to report on recent events. Any ship that wants to accompany us is welcome to do so." The response was immediate. Dozens of alien captains confirmed their intention to follow the human vessel. The fleet that had gathered to witness the sight of the Zephyrian defeat became an escort for the ship that had started the revolution. As the Defiance jumped to hyperspace with her unlikely allies, Morrison wondered what he would find when he reached Earth. The galaxy was at war and humanity was right in the middle of it. But for the first time since the confrontation began, Morrison felt hopeful. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology, but they had forgotten that there was something more powerful than plasma cannons and energy shields. The desire for freedom, once awakened, could not be stopped by any weapon. The age of imperial dominance was ending, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. 6 months after the battle in the Centauri system, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Great Hall of the United Nations building on Earth. The same hall where world leaders had once debated human problems now hosted representatives from dozens of alien species. The galaxy had changed, and Earth was at the center of that change. Morrison wore his dress uniform, decorated with the new Galactic Service Medal that President Karen Walsh had created specifically for his crew. The ceremony had been broadcast to every human world and many alien ones. People throughout the galaxy wanted to see the man who had brought down the mighty Zephyrian Empire. But the real celebration was happening outside Earth's atmosphere. Through the massive windows of the space station orbiting the planet, Morrison could see the ships of the new Galactic Freedom Alliance. Vessels from 47 different species floated together in formations that would have been impossible just a year ago. "The intelligence reports are quite remarkable," said Admiral Susan Brooks, the new head of Earth's expanded fleet. She handed Morrison a data tablet showing the latest news from across the galaxy. 17 Zephyrian worlds have declared independence. Their colonial governors are forming their own governments. Morrison read through the reports with amazement. The rebellion that had started with the destruction of one ship had spread to every corner of the Empire. Zephyrian military units were deserting to join the rebels. Trade routes that had been controlled for centuries were now free to all species. "What's the status of the peace negotiations?" Morrison asked. Admiral Brooks smiled. "Fleet Commander Zorketh arrived yesterday with a delegation from the Imperial High Command. They're requesting a formal ceasefire and negotiations for a permanent treaty." Morrison remembered the crystalline alien who had mocked Earth's shipbuilding at the original presentation. Zorketh had been one of the loudest voices demanding that humans accept their place as a junior species in galactic civilization. "I'd like to attend those negotiations," Morrison said. "Already arranged," Brooks replied. "President Walsh specifically requested your presence. The aliens want to meet the captain who started this revolution." The next day, Morrison found himself in a conference room aboard the neutral station where the peace talks were being held. Across the table sat Fleet Commander Zorketh and 3 other high-ranking Zephyrian officials. The aliens looked tired and defeated, very different from the arrogant beings Morrison remembered. Zorketh's crystalline body had lost some of its earlier sparkle. When he spoke, his voice carried none of the dismissive tone from their first meeting. "Captain Morrison," the alien began, "I must admit that we underestimated your species. The Empire made serious errors in judgment regarding human capabilities." Morrison kept his expression neutral. "What kind of errors, Commander?" "We assumed that technological superiority meant military superiority," Zorketh replied. "We believed that our advanced weapons and energy shields made us invincible. We forgot that different approaches to the same problem can be equally valid." President Walsh, who was leading the human delegation, leaned forward. The Empire's treatment of independent species was unacceptable. The protection taxes, the restricted trade routes, the assumption that you had the right to control other civilizations. We believed we were bringing order to chaos, another Zephyrian official said defensively. The galaxy was filled with conflicts before the Empire established peace. Peace through domination is not real peace, Morrison said quietly. It's just organized oppression. Zorketh nodded slowly. Perhaps you are correct, Captain. The rebellions throughout our territory suggest that many species agreed with your assessment. The negotiations continued for several days. The Zephyrian Empire, facing internal collapse and external pressure from the new alliance, was forced to accept terms that would have been unthinkable before Morrison's victory. The final treaty established the Centauri neutral zone as truly independent space, open to all species for trade and travel. The Empire agreed to end all protection taxes and remove restrictions on interstellar commerce. Most importantly, they recognized the sovereignty of any world that chose to leave Imperial control. Morrison watched as the documents were signed by representatives from dozens of species. The ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing everyone that the age of Imperial dominance had ended. After the signing, Commander Zorketh approached Morrison privately. The alien's crystalline form seemed somehow smaller than before, as if defeat had diminished him physically. "Captain, may I ask you a question?" Zorketh said. "Of course. When you faced our fleet in the Centauri system, did you know that your ship could defeat us?" Morrison considered the question carefully. "No, Commander. We hoped our weapons might be effective, but we had never tested them against Zephyrian technology. We were prepared to die trying to rescue those civilians." Zorketh was quiet for a long moment. "That is what we failed to understand. We thought warfare was about having the best technology. You showed us it was about having the best reasons to fight." Morrison looked out at the mixed fleet floating in space around the station. Human ships flew alongside vessels from species that had been enemies just months before. The sight still amazed him. "Commander, the Empire made one fundamental mistake," Morrison said. "You assumed that your way was the only way. You never considered that other species might have different solutions to the same problems. And your solution was superior," Zorketh admitted. "Not superior," Morrison corrected. "Just different. Our kinetic weapons worked against your energy shields because you had never faced that type of attack before. Your plasma cannons were less effective against our armor because we designed it differently than your ships." Morrison paused, choosing his words carefully. "The galaxy is big enough for many different approaches to survive. The Empire's mistake was trying to force everyone to use yours." 3 months later, Morrison stood on the bridge of the new USS Defiance II, watching as the first mixed-species patrol began its tour of the former Imperial trade routes. Human ships worked alongside former enemies to protect civilian vessels from pirates and raiders. Lieutenant Alex Turner, now promoted to commander and serving as Morrison's executive officer, approached with the daily reports. "The convoy from the Vegan free traders arrived safely at Alpha Centauri," Turner reported. "No Imperial interference. The trade routes are flowing freely for the first time in generations." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. The new ship was larger and more advanced than the original Defiance, but she still carried the same philosophy of design. Redundant systems, layered armor, and kinetic weapons that could punch through any known defense. "What's our next assignment?" Morrison asked. "Escort duty for a diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim," Turner replied. "Some of the newly independent worlds want to establish formal relations with Earth." Morrison looked out at the stars through the main view screen. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian Empire was slowly rebuilding itself as a more democratic confederation. Former Imperial worlds were learning to govern themselves. Species that had been oppressed for centuries were finally free to chart their own course. The original USS Defiance, battle-scarred but victorious, now served as a museum ship orbiting Earth. Millions of visitors came each year to see the vessel that had changed galactic history. Children from dozens of different species stood on her bridge and learned about the day a single human ship had faced down an empire. Morrison often thought about that day in the Centauri system when everything had changed. He had not intended to start a revolution, or bring down a government. All he had wanted was to rescue 12 civilians from a disabled freighter. But sometimes the most important moments in history began with the simplest decisions. The choice to help someone in need. The refusal to accept that might makes right. The belief that every species deserved to determine its own destiny. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology. They had assumed that their advanced weapons made them invincible. But they had forgotten the most important lesson in the galaxy, that the best technology means nothing without the courage to use it for the right reasons. Morrison smiled as he watched human and alien crews working together on the ships around him. The galaxy was no longer divided between rulers and subjects. Now it was a community of equals, each contributing their own strengths to the common good. The Empire had paid the ultimate price for their arrogance. They had lost not just their ships and territory, but their assumption of superiority. And in paying that price, they had given the galaxy something far more valuable than order. They had given it freedom.